As New Zealanders woke up on New Year's Day 1999, there were many nursing hangovers, many facing regrets about New Year's resolutions made the night before, but for one family in Ashburton, this day was the beginning of a nightmare which had started the evening before. Kirsty Bentley, a 15-year-old from Ashburton, had not returned home from taking her dog Abby for a walk the previous afternoon. Her mother Jill would look for her daughter that night, including a look down by the Ashburton River, with no success. On January 1st, New Year's Day, at 8 a.m, an official search and rescue operation began. Friends, family and police searched for the missing teenager. At 10 a.m, Kirsty's dog Abby was found tied to a tree in dense scrub beside the Ashburton River, close to Rebellion Park. Underwear and a pair of boxers were also found nearby. Searches continued and the media storm began. Kirsty's story was all over the news. On January the 17th, 1999, two men that were searching for cannabis plants came across Kirsty's body near Camp Gully Creek, off Scenic Highway 72, approximately 40 to 50 kilometres from Ashburton. Welcome to New Zealand Mysteries, I'm TJ. Today we are talking about the unsolved murder of Ashburton teenager Kirsty Bentley. New Zealand Mysteries is about giving a voice to those who have been silenced. We are on Facebook and YouTube, just search for New Zealand Mysteries. Most times when I release a story, I will pay to promote their story on Facebook, just so they can get as much reach as possible. The hope is that the right person or people might see the story, might rattle some information out of them, and they might finally come forward with information. We have an extensive website, newzealandmissing.wordpress.com. It has all the information about cases we feature and links to all the sources. There's many ways to support the channel. If you're able to support the channel, that would be fantastic. You can share these stories as far and as wide as you can. You can donate or sponsor the channel for as little as $1 a month. You can go to buymeacoffee.com or Patreon or into the account. All this information will be in the description box below and on the website. Of course, if you like the video, please hit the subscribe button and the like thumb and hit all on the notification bell. If you know anything about Kirsty's case or any other cases that I feature, please call Crimestoppers anonymously 0800 555 111, or you can go to crimestoppersnz.org. All this information will also be in the description box. Kirsty Marianne Bentley was born on the 18th of January 1983. She was the second child of her parents Jill and Sydney Bentley, and she had an older brother John. Kirsty grew up in Ashburton, and as a teenager she attended Ashburton College and was well liked by her peers. Kirsty's mum Jill described her as being an honest and compassionate teenager. Kirsty could be confident and direct with people she knew, but she could also be shy and reserved with people she didn't know. Kirsty had a close-knit group of friends. At the time of her murder, she had just begun dating a local boy from her school. Ashburton is a large town in the Canterbury region. It sits on the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. It is 85 kilometres from Christchurch, southwest of Christchurch. The Ashburton township has approximately 20,000 people, and there's another approximately 16,000 living in the wider district. On the day Kirsty disappeared, 31st of December 98, Kirsty went to the Ashburton Library and met up with a friend at about 10:30 a.m. The two girls done some shopping and then went to the local McDonald's for lunch, which was around midday. Kirsty was excited that day. Her boyfriend was coming over for dinner. Her mother Jill remembered the last time she'd seen her earlier that day as being happy and excited, and there was no sign of anything being wrong. Her friend's sister dropped Kirsty at her home around 2:30 p.m. Kirsty's brother John was home when she arrived, and he let her know that her boyfriend had rung and left a message for her. Kirsty returned his call, but he was not there, so she left a message for him to call her back. Records show that Kirsty made this call to her boyfriend at 2:38 p.m. Kirsty decided to take her dog Abby, a black lab, for a walk. This was something she did regularly, so it was not out of character for her. Her brother John either did or didn't hear his sister leave, depends on what article you read, but we do know that a neighbour witnessed Kirsty walking Abby past his house at 3:05 p.m. Kirsty's boyfriend called her back at 4:30 p.m. John was still at home, listening to music in his bedroom. He said that he kind of remembered thinking that Kirsty had been gone for a while, but not worrying about it too much. Kirsty's mum Jill returned home after work around 5:15 p.m. and John informed his mum that Kirsty had not returned home from her walk. Jill immediately felt something was wrong. Over the previous few months, she'd felt an unexplained dread that somehow my little girl was at risk. Jill called Kirsty's boyfriend back to check if he had seen Kirsty, but he told her that he hadn't. Jill noticed Abby's dog lead was missing from the stool by the back door where Kirsty usually dropped it. Jill immediately walked the route that she thought Kirsty would have taken while walking Abby to the Ashburton River. Not seeing Kirsty or Abby, she returned home. Both John and Jill agreed to wait a little longer to see if Kirsty would return home. Just after 6 p.m, Kirsty's father Sid arrived home from work, and when he heard about Kirsty not returning home, he called police. Kirsty had left home only wearing light clothes, a black tank top, a sarong with white butterfly patterned on it, and black shoes with white soles. Police, family members and friends searched for Kirsty throughout the night, but could not find any sign of Kirsty or her dog Abby. At 8 a.m. the next morning, the 1st of January, the official search and rescue operation began. At 10 a.m, searchers found Abby, the family dog. Abby was tied to a tree in a patch of dense scrub beside the Ashburton River, close to Robilliard Park. Searchers had been looking in that general area the previous night, but the dog was not found. They thought maybe someone had placed the dog there overnight, or because of the dense foliage in the area, it was possible that Abby was missed. Abby was tied to a tree with a lead. Strangely, Kirsty's family believed that it wasn't the lead that they had used to walk Abby. It didn't belong to the family. Not far away from where Abby was found tied to a tree, 2 items of clothing were found. A pair of underwear and a pair of boxers that were later confirmed to belong to Kirsty. Over the next 16 days, police and volunteers, including troops from the New Zealand Army, who were sent from the military camp Burnham, located in the region, searched the Ashburton area for Kirsty. Initially, the search focused in and around the Ashburton township, but the searchers expanded their detailed search to include a much larger area of Canterbury. On January 17th, 2 men were in the Camp Gully area of Rakaia, about 50 kilometres away from Ashburton, looking for cannabis plots. The 2 men came across a badly decomposed body lying in a patch of overgrown scrub. The body was lying at the bottom of a steep embankment, and it was covered in a thin layer of branches and leaves. The body was fully clothed except for underwear and was placed in a fetal position. The clothing found with the body matched the clothing that Kirsty Bentley was reported to be wearing the day she went missing. This body was recovered one day before Kirsty's 16th birthday. Police closed the scene and ordered a no-fly zone over the area as they conducted their investigation. They conducted an extensive scene examination over several days and even took plaster casts of tyre tracks in the area. In New Zealand at that time, it was the middle of summer. This meant that Kirsty's body was in an advanced state of decomposition. Her body was recovered from the scene and transported to Christchurch Hospital for a post-mortem. 3 days later, the body was formally identified through dental records as that of Kirsty Bentley. The post-mortem revealed that Kirsty was killed by blunt force trauma to the right side of the back of her head. The blow or blows were inflicted with enough force to severely fracture her skull. The pathologist determined that she would have died shortly after the wound was inflicted. The pathologist believed that Kirsty was killed soon after she went missing, and that it was likely she was placed in the Camp Gully area the same night. He made these findings from an examination of her stomach contents and the state of her body. Initially, police withheld her cause of death from the public. The story became one of the most high-profile cases in New Zealand history. Who Killed Kirsty became the story that everybody was talking about. This didn't happen in New Zealand or Little Ashburton, and it was enough to dominate front pages for weeks. On January 25, 1999, a funeral was held for Kirsty at St Stephen's Anglican Church in Ashburton, and between 500 and 700 people attended. Police stated that at times hundreds of individuals had been considered as suspects in Kirsty's disappearance, and at other times the list of suspects had been as small as 20 people. There were unconfirmed sightings that had Kirsty walking with 2 men near the river, but that sighting was never confirmed. Other witnesses later told of seeing a car with a blonde girl cowering in the front seat, while other sightings were apparently ignored by police. Media reported early in the investigation that Kirsty's father Sid and her brother John were suspects in the case. Both men continuously denied their involvement in Kirsty's disappearance and death. However, John did acknowledge that it was common sense that police should consider those close to Kirsty to be suspects, and police did confirm that the 2 men were suspects in the investigation. Police conducted a scene examination of the Bentley's home. Police conducted a scene examination of the Bentley's home at South Street in the early stages of the investigation, but found nothing of value. Sid was unable to provide a strong alibi for that day. The family believed that whatever Sid had got up to that day, he was embarrassed to admit it. But they did not believe that he was involved in the murder of his daughter. The constant police attention on the family was difficult. At one stage their house was bugged and Sid and John were being watched by police. No evidence was ever found that suggested that Sid or John were involved. A $50,000 reward offered in the months after Kirsty's death was withdrawn a year later after failing to bring any new information. Police asked the public for information about a green Commer van, registration EP9888. The van was described as a 1961 model that had been set up as a camper. The van had a distinctive Commer badge attached to the front. At the time, the van was not registered. The van was either blue or a faded blue-green. The van was rare, so police were confident that they would find it with the public's help. The van was originally brought to the attention of the police by a mechanic who had seen it in the area around the time of Kirsty's disappearance. Because the van was so distinctive, he was able to recall detailed information. The van was also seen by other witnesses in the Ashburton area in the weeks prior to Kirsty's disappearance. Police also received reports of it being seen in the Camp Gully area. Many people reported seeing the van to police, but all the sightings were discounted. No further leads on the camper were ever revealed, and it has never been found. Police distributed flyers asking for information on a girl who was seen near the van on Chalmers Avenue, which was close to where Kirsty disappeared. But despite repeated public requests by police, this girl never came forward, and her identity and her connection to the suspicious van remain a mystery to this day. In 2010, a British criminal profiler called Chuck Burton came to New Zealand to offer his expertise on the case. He claimed the riverbank was not where Kirsty was killed. He says her body was left in a respectful way, suggesting her body was dumped by someone who knew her, and they most likely knew the area well, suggesting it was someone local. His interpretation of the way Kirsty had been found, he was convinced the killer had some kind of link with Kirsty because of the way her body had been arranged. He said that she had been carried through thick thorn and placed on the ground, not thrown down a bank, and her body was placed in the fetal position. Her clothes had been laid on top of her body, respectfully covering her. He told this to Sunday program. So that's a bit different from her being fully clothed. At the time, police confirmed the list of suspects had been narrowed to about 20 people, and it still included Kirsty's father Sid and brother John. Both have admitted publicly that they were being treated as suspects, but had always denied any involvement in Kirsty's murder. In May 2014, Sid Bentley, 63 at the time, was still living in Ashburton, and he said it was his dying wish to see his daughter's killers caught. He had cancer and other health problems and was unsure how long he had left. Sid and Jill had divorced by this time. In 2015, Kirsty's father Sid died of cancer, never knowing what happened to his daughter. Kirsty's ashes were buried in the back garden of the Ashburton home by her dad. After his death, they were reunited with her mother, Jill. In 2015, her brother John said he was concerned that because some believed his father was involved, people may not now bother to come forward with new information. He worried that if the public thinks that whoever done it was gone, that they might stop caring about the case and the truth might never come out. He said that although he had no proof, he did not see how his father could have been involved in his sister's murder. After Sid's death in 2015, there was some renewed public interest in the case. It's reported that an unidentified woman had come forward to say that she expected her ex-boyfriend had been involved in the murder. The woman said she would now change her statement if asked by police. The Christchurch woman could not be identified for legal reasons, but said she and her ex-partner were interviewed several times following Kirsty's death, and her partner's vehicle had been of interest to the police at the time. The man had been a suspect in the original investigation, and both him and his girlfriend had been interviewed by police and media at the time. According to an interview with the woman, she stated that her ex-boyfriend, while intoxicated, had admitted his involvement to her on several occasions. Police would not comment on the woman's claim other than to say that the man in question had been fully investigated. After Kirsty's body was found, the woman and her ex-partner moved out of the area. At the time, police confirmed that they had taken a DNA sample from his vehicle for testing. On July 15, 2016, a coroner's inquest began. The role of the coroner is to determine the cause of death, time, date, and how someone died. There were many reasons a coroner would consider investigating a cold case, and one of those was to bring closure for a family. The coroner questioned the latest detective on Kirsty's case about the investigation. He asked the police investigator, "Where do police believe Kirsty died?" The detective replied, "We can't be 100% sure where the fatal blow was inflicted." He told the court that over the past 17 years, hundreds of people had been interviewed. There had been 140 people of interest, but not all of those had been eliminated. And he told the coroner that the homicide inquiry was still active. Coroner Peter Ryan ruled that Kirsty Bentley died on December the 31st, 1998, at an unknown location from a massive blow to the head. He was satisfied the injuries were not the result of an accident. He extended his condolences to Kirsty's family for their loss and the horrific way that she died. He said it was particularly hard that the perpetrator hadn't been brought to justice, but commended the police on persevering with the investigation. In 2017, police revealed that they were investigating a man called Russell John Tully in relation to Kirsty's disappearance. Tully was a local man who murdered 2 staff members at the Ashburton Work and Income Office in 2014. Tully had been known to camp in the area where Kirsty went missing. Tully strongly denied any involvement, and in 2018, police confirmed that he was not in the area at the time and was not involved. In late 2018, almost 20 years after Kirsty's disappearance, police announced that there had been significant advances in DNA testing. Items of evidence, including the dog lead and the underwear, had been submitted for further testing, and they hoped this would lead to a break in the case. I could not find any information about the results of these tests at all. In 2018, police confirmed that Kirsty's father Sid and her brother John were not involved in the crime. Well, they didn't believe that they were involved in the crime. Kirsty's big brother John now lives in Australia. Jill lives in Invercargill with her second husband. She doesn't have any theories on what happened to her daughter, and having no answers or any clues, she said, had been one of the toughest things to handle. She said, "But I think of the happy memories, not the day she died. I've been through some very black years of grieving and don't wish to return to that. Now if Kirsty's name is mentioned, I smile. She's the Kirsty I remember." In 2001, a book was released. It is called Kirsty, Her Mother Writes with Love. It's written by Jill Bentley, her mum, and with author Tony Williams, and tells the story of her 15-year-old daughter's life and death, the police investigation into her murder, and the terrible aftermath experienced by her family. I was able to put together Kirsty's story because of the extensive media coverage at the time. Despite this, in 2020, here we are, and the sick person or persons who took Kirsty that day and murdered her have not been found. This family deserves some answers, finally. You know, it must have been hell for the family living under a cloud of suspicion all that time in such a small town. And it was awful that her father Sid had to die without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. Please share this story as much as you can and as far as you can, and I'll do my part too. Thank you very much for spending this time with me. I hope to see you again. I'm out.